I was about 7 years old, my brother about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mom woke us up the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just the three of us at the house for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediately right was our parents' bedroom. Going left put you in the middle of the hallway, taking another left down that hallway led to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall to our upstairs bathroom. At either end of the hallway or window doors, we always kept locked and rarely used. The door to my end led to a balcony overlooking our front yard, and the door on my brother's end opened to our back porch. My brother and my mom both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I knew this because I was always a light sleeper and they couldn't just help flushing the toilet with the wide door open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came towards the bathroom. I'm gonna try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights I've been afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing strips on the end of the hallway. I don't know if my mom wrote it off as my brother telling a ghost stories to try to scare me or if she was already half asleep and didn't catch it, but she didn't react to it at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, I was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was about 18, my mother and I were having a conversation in her car about a dog we had for a very short time when I was little. We were sharing stories about Mac's tendencies towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors. When my mom blurted out, "Do you remember that time when I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me off by surprise because in all those years I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. I asked her what was she talking about, and she looked equally surprised as if she just revealed something by accident. "Oh right, I never told you, because you were too young at the time." One night, I woke up hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked, I saw a man staring into my bedroom. She went on to describe how turning on the lights caused him to take off running and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all the details I gave them when they showed up. Tall white male wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair, something like that. They said it matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he had escaped jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years later, in my mid-20s, that I pieced together that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights in our home. At the time this happened, I was a 13-year-old female. So this happened 2 years ago, when I was fairly naive. I was a major introvert, only a few friends with a few people in my class. I wanted it to be social, but I preferred to be alone and read or write classic nerd things. In early November, I got a text from my phone that I was in a few classmates whose phones numbers I had around or two I couldn't recognize. It was a group chat, asking if I wanted it to hang out at a nearby park near our school. My parents, being strict and paranoid, would never let me go. Luckily, or what I thought was luck, they were heading out for an overnight trip. They would be back at around 4 in the morning. Everything fell into place. Once my parents left around 8ish, I ran out the door and made my way to the park. The one thing I made sure was to lock the door, as my parents were paranoid after all, and it was their biggest thing that they engraved into me. Once I arrived at the park, I noticed a creepy figure near the edge of the woods. No one else seemed to notice it, and I had already had enough reputation as a weirdo who was true crime obsessed and didn't even mention it. The night drew on, and I was having the time of my life, ignoring the gut feeling I had telling me to run. Every so often I would look over my shoulder to see the man would still be standing there. At around 9:45, 4 out of the 10 people had left due to their curfew. It was getting cold, and it was nearly pitch black with a few street lights every so often. The rest of us decided to go, since it felt more eerie and quiet. The place we were hanging out was at a field that was fenced with a few exits and entrances. A large wide field with a small park in the back of our giant middle school behind us. The front of the field faced the empty road, and the right and left sides were surrounded by forest. All of the people left were getting picked up by cars, meaning they went to the opposite side of the road, since that's where the parking lot was. The man stood right behind the forest/road exit that I needed to take to get home. I walked away from my group and tried to steady my heavy breathing. I didn't want to be paranoid, but all the true crime that I listened to was catching up to me. The man was probably in his early 40s or late 30s, dark hair with a beard. He was probably around 5'9", but at the time it seemed like he was just 6 foot. He stood about 10 feet from the exit I had take, so when I got close enough to it, I ran about 30 feet through the exit and through the woods. Once I had felt safe enough, I started to just quickly walk through the woods, or at the very least get to the road. That's when I heard a snap and a crunch from behind me. I stopped walking for a second and quickly glanced over my shoulder. Around 15 feet behind me stood the very same man. He was walking slowly behind me, almost as if he was trying not to be suspicious, but it only made my fear worse. I turned around and walked so quickly that I was basically jogging. I lived about 10 minutes from this park we had hung out, and I wasn't athletic enough to run home. After around 7 minutes of walking fast, I was in my neighborhood. I knew I could run to my house if I had to, so I checked to see if he was still trailing behind me, and to my horror, he was only 5 feet away from me. I ran faster than I have ever ran. I could hear his footsteps behind me, trampling across the concrete as he ran too. I dove down to an alleyway I knew very well, and tried to lose him in a park, making my home way longer. I could hear his heavy breathing followed by his footsteps as he tried to keep up. I cut through houses, backyards, and front yards. I finally made it to my house and flew up the steps. I looked behind me, and he had arrived at the bottom of my stairs. I unlocked the door and bursted through, shoving it in, closed it behind me, and I heard him hit the door with his whole body. I ran around the house and locked all the windows, turned off the lights, and hid in my bedroom with a kitchen knife just in case if he got in. Luckily he didn't. If this was a better world, that's where my story would end, but it doesn't. After a few months, I hadn't really told anyone what happened since I didn't want to get in trouble with my parents for sneaking out or anything. I didn't go out with anyone or any group anymore, and I went back to my loner status. I began to write horror stories as a coping mechanism and never went out past 7. It was around February when a classmate of mine was sharing a story of some random man following her home on a bus. She described him almost the exact same as the man who had chased me home a few months earlier. Another girl mentioned that he sounded like the guy who stood outside the school and tried to follow her home. I didn't join in, but everyone agreed that he was just a weird guy. He was kind of forgotten, and eventually I moved on too. However, around May, I was getting ready to walk to school when my mom pulled me aside and showed me a picture of the man, the guy who actually stalked me. She told me that he had been arrested 2 weeks ago for sexually assaulting a child and had escaped last night. She told me to keep an eye out for him and to call the cops if I see him. I was shaking the whole time I walked to school. It haunts me to know that if he had caught me, I would most likely be in her position or even dead. I was 18 years old and on my way home to California on summer break after my sophomore year of college. I had a 9-hour car ride ahead of me and stocked on energy drinks, sodas, and snacks for the ride home. I had left school late after dinner with friends and planned on driving into the night. And I'm around 3 or so hours from home, which was Yuba City at the time. I'm in an hour outside Reno, and it's in a lonely stretch of highway when it happened. I suddenly get the urge to pee. With those energy drinks I chugged coming back to haunt me, and I kicked myself in the ass for not stopping when I had gassed up 45 minutes before. That's when I saw a sign that advertised a rest stop coming up, and so I drove the few miles to the sign and then pulled in. Parked in the parking lot was a rigid-looking sedan, and on the other side of the lot, a Sprinter-type van. I quickly got out and hurried into the restroom before I peed myself. I was flushing when I heard someone enter, and I froze. I'm in a decent physical shape, and I work out quite often, but for a guy I am on a smaller side. I'm only 5'7" and about 160 pounds. So I'm bracing myself for some Michael Myers type shit when I open the door and see an average Joe looking guy. He looked up and gave me a friendly smile, then stepped over to the urinal. I washed my hands and was getting ready to leave when he started talking. His voice was gravely and low, so I couldn't hear him for the first time. "Do you like dogs, man?" he asked as he was washing his hands. He was wearing those coveralls mechanics wear, and he had grease stains on it. My creeper meter started beeping. I shot him a friendly smile and said to him as I left the bathroom, "Yeah, man, dogs are cool." Well, that was the wrong thing to say because he comes following me out the door almost in my heels. "I got a new puppy. Wanna see him? He's real cute." Now I'm freaking out. Keys are in the hand and my cell phone is on the other. I called back to him a sneaky voice. "No thanks, I gotta get going." I'm getting into my car when he grabs the door, trying to open it wider. Dude was strong, and he's a few inches smaller than me. I started my car to put my phone to my ear, and what he said next caused me to almost crap my pants. "By the time the cops get here, you'll already be dead." With that, I kicked out his stomach, and thank goodness it connected to let go of the door and fell on his ass. I then locked the doors and screeched the fuck out of the rest stop. I saw him scramble for his car, but I didn't stay around to watch. I took off like a bat out of hell. I was nervous wreck for the next 3 hours, thinking if he was going to follow me home and finish me off. When I got home, I told my dad, who stayed up to wait for me, and what happened, but he talked me out of calling the authorities. I made sure to take an entire different route when I went back to school in the fall, and because of that, I'll never stop another rest stop ever again.